morning, everybody. Welcome to Drone Seeding for Restoration, our second winter webinar. Just going to wait a few moments for everyone to come into the waiting room or into the main room. Okay, I think everyone is here. Oh, a few more people coming in. I think we'll get started in the interest of time. So my name is Tracy Atwell. I'm a restoration ecologist with the Canadian Wildlife Federation. And this is our second of the 3 winter webinar series that we're hosting this year. We do this annually, and we'll share with you at the end a link to all the webinars that we've done if you would like to go back and revisit any of those. So just some basic housekeeping items. You'll see in MS there's a bunch of control tabs. So we're asking people to use the chat function if they want to tell us where they are, communicate with other attendees, or leave certain messages. There's a Q&A box for questions, and that's what we'll be looking for at the end when we want to pose questions to our speaker. And if you're having any audio issues, try playing with the More button and check audio settings. Sometimes people find that it's helpful with sound to have a headset or earphones to make the sound a little clearer for them. So here's some basic guidelines of engagement that we encourage people to participate by. So this is a moment to inquire, engage, and share and learn. We ask for creative common understanding, so clarify any technical terms, acronyms that you're using. Be empathetic, assume good intent, be curious and listen, and disagree respectfully. And share the screen time or airtime, so we're being mindful of your question and your comment link so others have a chance as well. So at this point, I encourage you to jump in the chat and say hello, tell us where you're from. As we come together in this electronic medium, we acknowledge the traditional Indigenous territories on which we gather today, including where each of you have joined us from. Here in Canada's capital of Ottawa, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. If you don't know which land you are joining us from today, I encourage you to take a moment after the webinar to look at this website, native-land.ca, and you can see a map of your area. So as I mentioned, this is our 2026 winter webinar series. So we have one more webinar planned for next month, and we put a little QR code on the slide. If you want to scan that with your phone, it will give you the details of the next one coming up next month, March 25th. And then the second QR code is all of those other previous webinars that we have done. So now getting to our theme or our speakers. We have 2 speakers. We have Matt Shelley from Mohawk College and Thais Therjamajire, Royal Botanical Gardens. Sorry if I butchered that name. And I will ask them to come forward and introduce themselves and show us their presentation.
Hi there. Very good. As Thais gets our slideshow up and presentable here for the audience, I'll do a quick introduction of myself. My name, as was presented there, is Matt Shelley. I come from Mohawk College, but more specifically from our Applied Research Center, what we call URSIC, which is Uncrewed Remote Sensing Innovation Center. The center is, I guess, in our 9th year of various applied research projects. We've had the honor of doing a number of different projects with Thais at the RBG, including the seeding project that we have on presentation today. So I'll turn it over to Thais here and let him introduce himself and introduce the project, and I'll drone on about drones in a little bit here.
Sure. And hello. Thais Meyer of the Royal Botanical Gardens. We'll give you a little overview of that shortly. Been here a long time. Big property at the western end of Lake Ontario. Currently, I exist as director of the property's ecology programs, security, on and on. And we get into all sorts of interesting things here with our dense population and number of partners, Mohawk being one of those. This project is really about a common partnership here at Royal Botanical Gardens, which is we have land that projects can be done on. We have a lot of land, 900 hectares, and there's tools and trials and research that all sorts of people are looking to find a place to take it for a spin. So that's what this project is. This is Matt's story. I don't know if you want to comment anymore. You basically described this, Matt.
Yeah, I kind of jumped the gun a little bit here, but certainly the one thing about what we do at URSIC is a number of things, and one of the primary goals that we do have is working with industry partners in all sorts of different industry sectors to explore the use of drones, but also explore the use of remote sensing. What that includes is everything from using laser scanners and photogrammetry and sonar and a number of other applications, and working from field to finish. We're working on solutions that help our industry partners use all this new tech, figure out what tech works and what doesn't, and fight through the marketing hype, and ultimately come up with a workflow that works. Some of the other things we do is some of the technology readiness testing and things of that nature, as well as some small projects to help help our industry partners on any number of things that they need. Yes, we do a lot with drones. We don't specifically target just flying drones. We have boats. We have land-based robots as well that we use, and it's all about finding the right solution for the task at hand or the problem at hand. So I'll probably have more to talk about this as we get through the presentation, but certainly this is one of the things that I'm involved with outside the classroom here at Mohawk College. I'll turn it back over to Thijs here to go through the project.
Very good. I'll just advance it a little overview now of the Royal Botanical Gardens, right? Let's see, the western tip of Lake Ontario, so we got a little satellite map, yellow circles, really where we are. Basically, the lands wrap around the western end of, physically the western end of Lake Ontario, where the escarpment is also passing through. The area was largely set up as a nature reserve idea. It's actually technically a Crown Game Preserve, provincial Crown Game Preserve in 1927. That was a spirited idea that sort of sputtered because everybody still wanted to use the land for farming, or actually a university came pretty quickly after 1927 and sits part in the Crown Game Preserve, that being McMaster. Otherwise, there's a botanical garden and a nature preserve. That's what's really going on here, lake to escarpment. And these lands are part of the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Huron-Wendat nations, between the Lakes Treaty with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. And I should highlight that this is a boundary location of activity. This treaty is one of the earliest for Canada, just the location post-war treaty, War of American Revolution, and prior to the European influence, this was dominated by an entirely different nation, an Iroquois nation called the Neutral Nation, or the Attawandaron. Things didn't go so well for that nation in the European colonization of the area, but they still exist. They're just all scattered into all three of those other nations, and probably others. So this is our site. Our site, being the western tip of Lake Ontario, has all the international infrastructure that creates power, water, sewer, gas passing around the end. This particular project is tied to the power corridor. So this, if you want power from Niagara Falls to reach you, it passes through this location. And this is a picture of me standing in the corridor. The back of Cootes Paradise, managed by Hydro One. It's an easement across the Royal Botanical Gardens lands. There are actually 4 hydro corridors across the Royal Botanical Gardens lands, which have increased in number from 1 to 4 over time, just because of all the power people are looking for. The lands are quite diverse in topography and geology, just because we're going from a Lake Ontario edge up to the escarpment in a couple kilometers. This particular project came up simply because, as hydro corridors do, they get cleared to make sure the trees don't short the wires out and you can get to the towers to fix them. And we did not want it seeded with just a regular old field mix. We wanted something ecologically appropriate, notwithstanding these corridors have been cleared for years and regrew with various things. That was not something that Hydro One and their contractors were geared to do. Thus, they paid for some seed of my specific prescription, which is a local mix. I'll get to it. And Mohawk College on the other end had a new drone that they were looking to try at the time. This is 2022. And my option was, well, I have this weird shaped seed. You have a drone. Can we do something fun with it? See what is actually quite a simple landscape, but not a small landscape. So if you look closely, this yellow dotted circles, actually the locations we did it. In this photo, you're looking west towards Lake Ontario. The interior bay is Hamilton Harbor, and then the back bay is Cootes Paradise Marsh. So this is the corner of the Cootes Paradise property / Crown Game Preserve. And the big stripes through the trees are 4 hydro corridors, 2 and 2. So the north corridor got buzzed, and the interesting thing, hydro would prefer it to be a meadow. We would prefer it to be a meadow, so you spend less time buzzing. So if we can get a good mix of meadow shrub species in there, maybe we keep the buzzing and disruption that happens when you grind out a corridor in a nature sanctuary to a minimum. Moving on. There we go. The seed. Seed is really a diverse meadow mix, and it actually is labeled by St. William's Nursery and Ecology Center, so a big plant nursery in our region closer to Lake Erie, actually, but at the time, certainly one of the cutting edge nurseries for native plants, and still is. They actually are an operation that took over a provincial tree nursery, one of the biggest ones of Southern Ontario back, let's say 25 years ago, 30 years ago. If you know your seeds, you can see a lot of ryegrass sticking up. That's just the biggest seed, but there's a lot of kinds of plants in there, various meadow grasses. The topography of the site is wet, dry, clay, sand, silt. It's everything. So it's just a broad seed mix, and their whole title of their seed mix is Hydro Upland. I kick it over to Matt for the drone story. Oh, I should, before I lose the details here, an interesting restriction of this site, let me back up to, which comes down to drones, planes, and everything, is immediately adjacent to us. We have orange helicopter pad, which controls all sorts of air traffic, like it's within a half a kilometer. Of course, you're under hydro wires or over hydro wires of Niagara Falls, really. And then we have an airport not so far away. So there's lots of challenges and restrictions that control drone use. So I'll pass that over to Matt.
Yes, yeah, that's where I get the drone on about drones, but also about the regulations. I don't plan to bore anybody with the regulations, but those things you highlight, Thijs, are some of the key items that anytime we're flying, we have to be aware of. And I'll get to the more of the regulations after I speak more about the technology. So starting with the drone that we used, the drone we used seems to be now a legacy product for DJI Agras lineup, but the DJI Agras T10 stands for a 10 liter or a 10 kilogram capacity. The problem with this drone was that if you did the whole 10 kilogram or capacity, you would actually be over the 25 kilogram weight restriction that we used to have with advanced licensing. As you see here on this slide, one of the biggest changes from the time that we did this project to more recent is that there has been changes to regulation, which again I will get into momentarily. So to start out with, the drone was selected because it's a good demonstration unit. We could fly under the 25 kilogram weight restriction in controlled airspace, as we were pointing out before, and be able to use this drone effectively for demonstration purpose to start, right? I mean, why use a drone is part of the theme of today. Oftentimes we're using drones in circumstances where it is more difficult for people to move safely, or we're using them because they're more efficient than trying to do it, in this case, probably spreading seed on foot by hand. And so the other thought I had is that the other option would be by machines, right? And sometimes the machines can be more disruptive than what a drone can be. So the selection of the equipment is all based on the site. And I think that Thijs has a little more to add to that as we get through the presentation here. But the drone itself has the capability to spray, but more importantly, we use it for seeding in this particular application. So moving along to the next slide here, the key with this particular setup was, how do we get it, programmed? How do we get it flying and spreading seed in an efficient manner? I wasn't personally a part of the whole process on site. One of my other fellow colleagues was working with Thijs, but certainly one of the key things was that we had to fly the drone safely underneath the hydro wires and not hitting the towers or nearby vegetation. We had the T10 set up with the T-Series spreading system 3.0, which is limited to the 8 kilogram capacity, which, in the case of seeds, that's not a whole lot. I think one of the biggest feedback that we got from Thijs was that there was a lot of, flying out, minimal flying time before it had to come back for batteries and of course more seed. We'll talk about how that that efficiency can be increased here as we go along, but certainly, there was a lot of back and forth flying. But the program flight was done previous to putting seed on board. I think a lot of the program flight was done day of with the drone, establishing some boundaries and making sure it wasn't going to hit anything. And then if there was an iterative process, which is the next slide there, Thijs, of working on a setting within the spreader itself to figure out what the best operation would be, right? So basically we had to figure out a setting for like how fast the spreader is going to start dropping seed out of the drone, figure out an appropriate forward speed, and and observe that in a controlled space to get an appropriate spread of seed in and amongst the entire area. Similar process has to be done with the spraying, which I've done with this drone personally. And it is an iterative process at first to figure out an appropriate rate, not only a rate of the spreader, but also an appropriate rate of speed of the drone. And once you have that established, I mean, that can be replicated from flight to flight on the site, but of course from site to site based on the particular seed at hand. So although it was an iterative process and probably took about an hour's worth of time, once you have that established, right, it's just a matter of seeds and batteries and fly the missions. So moving on to the next slide there. Flying the missions is another whole half of the process for us with the drone. As I hope many of you are aware, you do have to hold a pilot's license to fly a drone. And I know that pilot license sounds rather formal, and I do agree with you there. You do have to hold a Transport Canada drone pilot's license or pilot certificate in order to fly drones that are of more than 250 grams here in Canada. And so as such, there are a number of rules that we have to abide by for us to legally use drones here in Canada. And so first is getting that drone pilot's license. In order for us to fly the site that Tice showed us earlier, yes, we are flying within the control, like within the airspace of the helipad at McMaster. We are flying within the controlled airspace of Hamilton International Airport. And so all of those, like those items alone require us to have an advanced license here in from Transport Canada in order to be able to legally fly in that airspace to start with. Additionally, before November 4th of 2025, drones that weighed more than 25 kilograms, anything from 25 kilograms to 150 kilograms, we would have also had to have applied for a special flight authorization certificate, an SFOC. And so that's why we chose the smaller T10 drone for demonstration, because it was easier for us to navigate demonstrations and showcase the product without the need for an SFOC every time we did any demonstration with the particular, like with the T10 drone. At the time, the larger of the units were like the T30 and the T40 and T50. And all of those had the respective 20, 30, and 40, 50 kilogram capacities. Obviously, more capacity meant that the drone got bigger and heavier, and you needed these SFOCs every time you flew. So we chose a smaller drone for the demonstration. But now we'll slide to the next slide there, Tice. And I think this is one of the key items, or hopefully one of the key takeaways for people in the webinar today, is that the regulations have changed. As of November 4th, 2025, Transport Canada has released updated regulations for drone piloting. There are a number of things that I won't get into today. That includes another level of pilot certificate, which is the level 1 complex, which is allowing some very well thought out beyond visual line of sight flight. That's a whole nother category and not part of today's discussion. One of the most interesting parts of these regulation changes is the one I have highlighted and bolded there, is that with an advanced pilot license, we have now this new category of medium RPAS, right? This category of 25 kilogram to 150 kilogram allowance, right? And so we'll flip to the next slide there, Tice. This next slide is literally an excerpt from Transport Canada. This is what the medium RPAS standing for Remote Piloted Aircraft System, right, or drone, right? So if I say RPAS, it means drone. If I say drone, it means RPAS. Once we start getting into this category, being able to fly visual line of sight with our advanced pilot's license, we're now going to see a higher interest, I guess is the way I'll classify it, a higher interest in using drones to do these seeding operations and subsequently spraying operations, which is another topic we'll maybe venture to mention a couple things at the end here about. And so because of that, we're starting to see more products come out and more options for us to do this type of work more efficiently. And that, I guess we'll take a look at the next slide there, Tice.
Mm-hmm.
And my next slide there gets into some of the other product lineup. I think the interesting part of the industry or the market and where it's heading is getting into these larger and larger drones in general. We've had comments in some of the presentations I've done after working with the RBG about the size of the T10. Well, the T10 pales in comparison to the size of its the rest of the lineup there. You can see in the slide there's the DJI, and I'll just take myself off camera so you can see a little bit better here. Right, we have product lineup in the crop protection lineup there. We have everything from the DJI Agras T25 all the way to the T100, and those numbers correspond basically with the capacity of each one of those drones. Essentially, what that number corresponds with is a weight capacity that drone can carry. In the case of spreading, we can carry anywhere from 25 with the T25 drone, 25 kilograms, all the way up to the T100 that can carry up to 100 kilograms of seed. I think we've got it highlighted in this next slide here. Yeah. So if we just flip the next slide there. One of the, as I alluded to before or spoke of before, one of the feedbacks from TIES was the efficiency of the smaller T10. It did seem like there was a lot of fly for about 10 minutes, 10, maybe 15 minutes, come back. It needed a battery, it needed seed, and it needed to keep going, which is, just part of the function of using drones for seeding and of course spraying as they're developed for. There is a lot of fly out, apply the product, get back, put more product in, give it a battery, and keep going. The more efficient usages of this type of product I've seen, or these types of drones, there's been some really big promoters of these products stateside that I've seen. One of they're on YouTube. I forget the name of the YouTube channel, but they're also creating their own business for the trailers that they're using. So they'll have two of these T50 drones on a trailer. One's flying, spraying or seeding, and then while it's out there, the other one's getting battery filled up and ready to swap and keep the production going. So you're not relying on just one of these drones. You're actually, if you're doing this production, especially for row crop type applications, you'll have two of them, and the keeps the productivity higher. But that said, for more niche application like we did with TIES, a larger drone does have typically more efficiency built in, just in the way that it holds more product, as well as typically the battery runtime is a little bit longer. The manufacturers don't give you a runtime like they do some of the other drones. Really, they literally give you an acreage per hour type rate. And what you'll see is that with the smaller drone that we used, the acreage per hour coverage was less efficient than some of these larger and higher capacity drones. So I guess just moving on to the next slide there, Tice, we do have a quick video of what this thing looked like, and so we'll let it run. Tice, I don't know if you have anything to talk over it, but at least you get to see it in action.
Yep. This was optimistic that this would work, so we'll see. I'll run it a few times, but what you should pick up is there's a ridiculous number of rules and regulations to hike your way through to even fly drone, which at our location amp up 2 levels because of 3 levels: the presence of people, just generally effects on drones on them, just population, the wildlife side, which is an RBG regulation side, the helicopter pad and the emergency landings that would occur. Thus, the pilot has to stand there with his phone on just in case a phone call comes in to say shut it down. And then, of course, when you're in the hydro corridor, this is actually a pre-programmed flight. So the pilot's not actually flying the drone. The pilot's pre-programmed it. And that, of course, no one's going to be happy if the drone flies into the hydro tower or the wires. Hence, the pre-programmed flight thing starts to create what Matt would call a prescription, or basically a set of guidelines and rules that let you fly in a standard way. So this is a little bit of an R&D project to kind of develop these, just like the seed side, because these are agricultural drones, there's no setting to fire native plant seed onto the ground that you have any idea about, because it's well set up for, say, rice, which is a nice even seed. So there's lots of playing. I'm going to play that again. So this is pre-programmed flight. We did a little dance when it stopped and turned.
Guys, it's kind of hard to hear you over the drone. Could you just wait till it's a bit quieter?
Yep.
I've paused the video there, so hopefully you should hear him just fine now. We might have lost you, Tyson.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
just
okay.
I'm here. Letting it fly one more time just so you can see it.
I ran the video a couple of times there, Ty. So if you want to maybe just switch to the next slide there, just to get past some of the technical difficulty. We were concerned about the video option here.
Anyway, yes, the top feature is, of course, that it's a pre-programmed flight, and we are just figuring out settings for an agricultural drone to fire seed onto the ground at some useful rate that has nothing to do with the way you would put rice or soybeans or corn or anything on the ground. The pre-programmed flight part is critical just because of the hydro corridor and safety of wires and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, Tyson, just to add to that, I mean, I kind of glossed over some of those details. There are a number of options for manually pre-programming the flight, as well as using other drones to help support pre-programmed flight. We can oftentimes use other drones that can do a photogrammetry map of the area, use that photogrammetry map to more accurately plan a route for these larger spreading drones and keep them out of trouble. So yeah, there's a number of things. Site survey is our key item to keep a safe flight, and that is all around the proper usage of drones and doing everything legally with Transport Canada. We also had to, of course, because we're in controlled airspace, we also had to make sure that we did the appropriate nav drone approvals and have all of the Nav Canada approvals to be flying within that controlled airspace. So yeah, there's a number of things that we have to put together and make sure that it all works together. I assume there may be questions about that, and certainly we're going to ask those or answer those as B. And if not, if the questions come up later, our contact is coming up soon too. So, Tyson, I'll kick it back to you and let you tell the story of a few years later kind of deal.
There you go. Anyway, most of the adventure here is running the drone in this controlled space, and getting some seed on the ground was a lovely sort of side project. Of course, this is the corridor kind of last year. I don't really go out there and take pictures of it, so I had to scrounge for pictures.
I could just have to advance the slide there, Tyson.
I just want to check. Do you guys see some plants? You should see some plants in a corridor.
Yes, I think, Matt, you have advanced on your own, and it might just have to reconnect with Tyson.
That's
okay.
Anyway, so a ratty hydro corridor that's been mowed many a time, and it's actually sometimes a grinder machine that chews up a hydro corridor to get rid of the roots of, take your pick, a buckthorn tree or a, doesn't matter, just grinds it right up. So that's what actually had just happened. This prior to seeding, and so we go. There's a lot of what was seeded growing now. If you know your grasses, prairie grasses, they take a long time to go from a little seedling to a great big plant. On the right hand picture, there's some Indian nut grass all through there. Of course, the center of the right hand picture is a separate project we were doing. Hence, I took the picture. It's a tree of heaven. So, of course, these disturbed sites are just fantastic for colonizing invasive plants in southern Ontario. That's one of our many. But anyway, overall, we got some of the plants from the seed mix. It's probably, I don't know, I'll optimistically say it's 40% of what's growing out there. And of course, I know the grasses will just get bigger and bigger every year. It's only a couple of years in. And what actually dominates the site is goldenrod, Canada goldenrod. So no surprise there. Good colonizer, Canada. Advanced. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah. We joked previous to presenting to everybody today about some of the new features in Teams, and I think I just got schooled by one of them, which was sync to presenter. I did find that button. Thank you. As I mentioned before, we've had the honor of working with RBG a number of times on a few different projects over the last, I guess, 5 or 6 years now. And all this comes from, as Ty said, the RBG is situated in a well, they're in our backyard, so that helps. But also, a very unique area that allows us to do some unique projects. We've had the opportunity to use our 3D laser scanner on a drone to do shoreline mapping. We've done a photogrammetry mapping to map out various invasive species, like invasive plant species, monitoring for throughout the year, as well as we part of the seeding project was also to get out and spray for things like spongy moth at the time. That rolled into a whole nother ball of wax, so to speak. When you start to deal with anything basically dropping off of these drones, like seeds and like spray, they do obviously fall under various other regulatory bodies. And in the spray world, in order to legally spray, of course, we need to have KMRA approvals for the products that are being sprayed. At the moment, there are not a lot of products that are approved for drone spraying. There are a few, and they're they have been developed and trialed with in conjunction with various clientele across Canada to get those prescriptions out there. We tried to get the prescriptions, and some of our, in fact, our whole trial relied on the manufacturer of the product, who will remain nameless for this presentation. But unfortunately, when people, key people leave, it leaves those projects out in the cold. It was a struggle. We ended up doing a spray trial for urban trees with Ty's and his team, and we actually were able to get expertise from Vineland Research Center as well to help us figure out and determine the effectiveness of the drone sprayer on urban trees. So that was another interesting spin-off of the project we were working on, specifically in relation to the seeding that we were doing. So that's, I guess we'll turn it over there to the contact slide there, Thijs, and open it up to Q&A. Do you have anything else you want to add before we switch to the Q&A?
Yep. So I would just sum it all up as the dreams we had of dealing with spongy moth or Phragmites or whatever from a drone. Because of the regulatory barriers, all we ever sprayed was basically water to look at spray patterns versus nozzles, to be an interim research step that could get you to an approval process that would let you put whatever in the drone to actually spray it. So all said and done, all we've ever sprayed is water on paper with some dye. That's interesting. Seeds a different category, but as soon as you cross into those regulated pesticides world, you have to, even though you can shoot them from a helicopter or shoot them from an airplane, you can't shoot them from a drone. It's an interesting world, but it's evolving quickly. And I think Matt was really trying to highlight, and I'm sure there's a ton of questions because this world is evolving quickly. And I don't even know. Anytime I talk to Matt, it's an education because it just changes.
So that said, Thijs, I'm also learning very much on the go as well. I do see a bunch of things in the question and answer section here, so I'll do my best to tackle some of the things that I can. I just realized it wasn't updating really quickly here, so I just hit the update, and of course now I don't know where to begin. I'll begin at the bottom because I think those are some of the first questions here. So Thijs, I think this one's one for you. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to jump to Q&A, so I'll just field the questions, and then you and Thijs can decide who wants to answer.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you both. That was very informative. It's kind of where restoration and tech are kind of commingling these days, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just going to pull up my slide here. Okay, so we are just at the Q&A section. Yeah, and there's been a lot of interest in the Q&A there, so we'll just go through the questions, and I'll just let either one of you want to jump in on them. So starting at the very beginning, how do you ensure good seed to soil contact after drone seeding?
Sure, I'll take that one. In this case, there was nothing there but ground up dirt, basically, so it was no problem. Otherwise, it would be quite a challenge if you had a lot of vegetation, right? So this was dealt with by a big grinder machine that went back and forth and just made it raw ground. And it was early May, so a little bit of the root systems of old grasses and things were coming up there that gave it that green hue. At the same time, this was definitely not a project intending to do a fantastic restoration project with the drone, because it was a total experiment on if the drone would even work to spread the seed. Otherwise, I'd be walking around with the bag and firing it with my hand. That's option 2.
So it wasn't really about like how great this could be. It's about, can you do it? Like, is this doable?
Yeah.
Right.
Doable?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. A related question here, was any soil preparation done prior to seeding?
Very good.
You mentioned the grinding part, right? Yeah.
The hydro machine just ground the field, the meadow / trees into dirt and sticks and bark.
Right.
Which is how hydro corridors are maintained.
I think this one might be either one of you. How did you get permissions to fly in the corridor and under the hydro lines? Hydro 1 has a lot of restrictions on this typically.
So
yes.
Oh, go ahead. Yep.
This is an excellent question. So hydro corridors have multiple versions of agreements and ownerships. I'll say the top 3 are Infrastructure Ontario owns the corridor, and Hydro is a tenant on the corridor. That's one. That's a hard one to work your way through. Depending on how old the corridor is, Hydro's another entity that's Hydro would own the corridor. We actually have that because we have the original hydro corridors of Canada right here. So 4 corridors, one of the 4 is actually owned by Hydro. The other 3 are owned by Royal Botanical Gardens by easement. Thus, you have an easement agreement on what you can and can't do there between Royal Botanical Gardens and Hydro. That's the most easy way to get things done. Thus, I'm the controller of things, and we'll have different hydro contacts for different reasons. So in this case, under controlled circumstances, drone flying is not restricted, but you can see in other scenarios how that would trip up. I'm sure it would trip up in an Infrastructure Ontario owned corridor. And that's not because it's not perfectly feasible. They've just never worked out the rules and regulations that they would agree to.
Oh, sounds like it's very specific to which corridor that you're dealing with and who owns it and all that kind of thing. Yeah,
That's-
okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
from a responsible pilot perspective, I mean, that is always number one. We've flown in a number of different circumstances, including inside the fence at the Hamilton Airport, around and up to the border at Niagara Falls. All of these, of course, require a whole lot of approvals and approval process before you're ever granted access. And with that, there are a number of restrictions, and that is part of being a responsible, legal flying pilot in Canada, right? And that's something that whatever circumstance, whatever solution that we are providing, part of the understanding is what regulations are necessary to navigate within wherever we're working with. And I don't have all the specifics for this particular project. Unfortunately, I wasn't the one who flew this one. One of my past colleagues was part of that, but that is part of being a responsible pilot, is getting all the appropriate permissions, not only from Transport Canada and Nav Canada, but from the landowners themselves.
Yep. Another seed question. So do you have a sense of what percentage of the species that you seeded grew and prospered?
I want to say I don't really know, because it's not something we specifically monitored, because it was kind of a side project. So I wander through there now and then and go, yep, that's part of what was planted there. That's part of what was planted there. A lot of them being these perennial meadow grasses and wildflowers. It takes quite a few years before they build their size and they really show themselves. And I was actually impressed just to see how much of the grasses were finally showing in this past year. But hydro corridors aren't the bread and butter of the nature sites, right? We'll say that. They're just a thing we live with.
With most forbs and grass seeds being very small and light, how critical would it be to determine the height at which the drone flies and the wind conditions on the day of drone seeding?
An excellent question, as you say. Lots of the seeds, and there was what do I want to say? Oh my goodness, the wildflower with the anyway, the dust seed. We would not have flown it if there was at all any wind. That was one of the criteria. Not a windy day, because we're going to lose everything. The height, now you're into the height versus the wind versus the site restrictions, which might be hydro wires. It might be you can't fly above a certain elevation, which is a drone rule, or below a certain elevation. So you're into actually the nub, or the real restrictions tied to drones and their uses, and the whole world of what's called, I guess, prescriptions. So I'd leave Matt to take that a little further, but this was just like an R&D trial. Can it work? Is it even possible?
Yeah, and to further your point there, Tice, I mean, much of what had to happen, to just do the demonstration, was be able to figure out a setting that worked. And as I said, it was an iterative process that my past colleague and Tice worked on to do some trial runs with it, figure out what the seeding rate was being applied on the ground. I mean, I'm sure the first one was probably too thin, and the second one was probably way too dense. And finally, somewhere about the seventh or eighth attempt, it finally came to a spread rate that equaled what you would do by hand, and then the actual prescribed flights and the program flight took place from there.
Yeah. I can answer that. Our first step was we flew it in a parking lot that was empty, one of our RBG parking lots, just to see if seed would come out of it and be even reasonable. Like, that's how starting point, ground zero, we started at.
Is there sort of a minimum height that it can fly at? Like above the ground, it has to be at least half a meter or something, or does it?
I mean, it's whatever is comfortable. And oftentimes when you're in corridors like this, the obstacle is vegetation, existing vegetation on the ground. I think from the photos that were presented here, you can see the vegetation was trimmed down pretty well. And you know, so there wasn't a whole lot on the ground, but I mean, yeah, we can skim across the at a very low altitude with the drone, so long as there's not physically something that's going to get in the props and take the drone down.
Does it have like a sensor where it can like, oh, it encounters something high, I need to go around it? Does it have that kind of
There
technology?
is some obstacle avoidance. There is some radar involved with the drone as for obstacle avoidance. That obstacle avoidance technology is something that we're seeing evolve as we speak, along all of the not only DJI product line, but of course the drone ecosystem in general is seeing more and more obstacle avoidance and more automated flight that can navigate around some fairly small objects. But yeah.
Actually, that's actually the reason for the video that existed, was we were actually testing the obstacle avoidance. So it has programming that it's going to turn at X coordinates and go X distance and turn at the next X coordinates, but you knew you wouldn't have that perfect. And so how would the drone respond with its own built-in radar obstacle avoidance? And we were, well, I was impressed, and I don't even know the details behind it. That's actually why we were taking the video, to go, yep, this really will work in here.
Right. The next question's related to spraying. Does the provision on a pesticide label for aerial spraying apply to drones or just regular aircraft?
So they are two different things. If you have a prescription for a product, it must say RPAS on it for it to be sprayed from a drone. Last time we checked, which was about, when I say we, I mean my colleague Tyler and I. Tyler's arguably the more knowledgeable of I think the next question is going to follow up on this one, but the number of prescriptions and what those prescriptions are. But in general, for a PMRA approval, a Health Canada label that we can use to spray products from drones, it must say RPAS. You cannot just take a prescription that is good for an airplane or a helicopter and say, well, if it works for that, it works for RPAS. No, it must be labeled for RPAS. And so I think at last look, there was 7 products that are labeled with RPAS approval. Which I think follows us to the next question there, Tracy. I see it.
Yeah. All right. Products currently registered that allow for drone spraying of invasive Phragmites?
If you have questions about invasive Phragmites and what products are out there and what's happened, I mean, we're investigating that world. We have tons of questions on that topic as we speak. It's something we've been exploring. Various conservation authority people have been asking the same question. It is something that we are investigating, and it's like I said, I point back behind me because that's where my fellow colleague, his office space is. He's not available for this presentation today. Otherwise, I would drag him in. But yeah, there's a lot of interest in using spray drones for invasive Phragmites, and I don't have all those answers for this forum today. I encourage you to use my contact information there. That'll be provided after the series is done here, and yeah, we can follow up on that for sure.
Okay, sounds good. Question about maintenance. What kind of maintenance and how often? Is there any high mowing planned in the future?
But I'll take that question, obviously. It's an excellent question. We continue to try to arrive at agreement with Hydro One on how to maintain the corridor in any conservation lands, but this obviously just ours specifically. So far, we've not arrived at an agreement. That's more, we've picked up now that there's an interest in an initiative in Hydro One, but they seem to be spending most of their time just making sure the power corridor is working, not trying to resolve the custom improvements to plant communities under the hydro corridor. For their purposes, they're dealing in lots of emergencies or just keeping towers going. And so you tend to have contractors going between places, and it's often a different contractor each time. And they're just grinding it to the ground. So we would like to arrive at that outcome. But my experience over the years, and even this is going on this year again in the winter, I've dealt with 5 different people in 3 weeks. That tells you how much they switch up who's at what location.
And I think we'll jump to, we've got a lot of questions, but we're probably not going to get through them all. A couple of money questions. Can you share anything about the rates of the costing of the drone and what kind of hours it took? Also some questions about what the size of your site was and things like refilling, battery life, logistics of it.
Yeah, I'll start with that, and Thijs, I'll let you fill it in as well. As far as the, I suppose the total size and how much time and that kind of stuff. As I was mentioning before, the manufacturers, the way that they give it like an efficiency rating for their drones is they give you number of acres that can be covered per hour. What I was seeing from our T10, the advertised coverage, I believe was 15. I don't have, I had it. I should have put it in the slides.
No worries. It'll be in the recording.
I want to say it was, let's say it was 15 acres, might have been hectares. The hectares doesn't make sense. No, it must have been acres. Per hour. Yeah, it must have been 15 acres per hour or something like that. I think the larger ones were 20 to 25 kind of thing. So so that hopefully at least gives you a little bit of insight on that. Thijs, for our particular area, how efficient did you find it was?
It's hard for me to judge because mostly we were figuring out how to even make it work. So we went out back and forth with the drone and trials a good 20, 25 times, which just to get a seed dispersal rate that you were reasonably happy with for an elevation of whatever we were at, 10 meters up off the ground or something like that. The problem with what we were doing then, which leads it to the step where I can't give an easy answer, is batteries seem to be good for 15, 20 minutes. And so it's an electric powered drone. So after you went out 20 plus times, you've burned up all your batteries. And then we were sitting there with a gas generator recharging the batteries. So I don't recall, I feel like there was 4 batteries on hand, and probably that was the more surprising part, was how quickly we burned through batteries and how much of a project it was just to manage the power system. Now that's a couple years ago now, and drones and batteries and electricity are always evolving. But as Matt mentioned, that was kind of the pain in the butt, was what it was, in this back and forth. But if we had just been now ready to go, we know this set of settings and whatever, I bet we could have done the whole site with the 4 batteries that came with us, which was, well, what is this site? About 300, the one site, 300 meters long and 100 meters wide. So what's that? Couple of hectares. So it would, I mean, once you figure it out, we could have, from start to finish, had that site seeded in an hour, including just getting the drone out, loading the seed in. With the prep though, right? You had to, because of our site, you had to reprogram the flight path and include power poles, and so that was its own project on the Mohawk end.
There's lots of logistical things to work out, isn't there? Yeah, I saw a presentation where they were doing a spraying of weedy invasives along a huge right of way, and they had like trailers set up so that they could take the battery from that unit, take it like 100 meters up the road to the trailer, charge it, and just keep, relaying it down the road. So it's quite a lot of effort for sure. Okay, I think we're at 1. So do either of you have any final thoughts you want the audience to take away with?
For me, it's just yeah, if you have further questions about using drones, using remote sensing technology, spreading, spraying, yeah, feel free to use my contact that was in the slideshow today, and reach out. It's not just me; it's also my colleague Tyler and various other part-time people that we have, and yeah, if you have questions, we'll try to answer them more one-on-one outside of this forum.
Sounds
There you go.
great. And Tyce?
Yeah, I would only add drones are created under other purposes, and so using them for weather restoration is its own kind of project. Holds a lot of potential, has a heck of research and development to work its way through, even though you think there's a wonderful drone sitting in front of that you should be able to do X, Y, and Z with tomorrow.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, both of you. That was a great presentation. And thank everyone for watching and attending. As I said, this will be recorded and it'll be on our YouTube channel. And you can use the QR code on your screen to connect with us or find out more information. We can also connect you to Matt and Tyce as well. So wishing everybody a good rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.